Every day, millions of young people scroll through social media without even realizing how deeply the design of these platforms really shapes their behavior. Today, we examine KGM versus Meta, YouTube, Snapchat, and TikTok, a case that asks whether those design choices can be considered harmful to minors.
Here I'll provide a quick overview of the case. The lawsuit was filed by a 20-year-old woman from California who claims that major social media platforms were intentionally designed to be addictive, particularly for young users. She argues that the design contributed to several mental health issues, including anxiety, depression, body dysmorphia, and even suicidal thoughts. This trial is being held in the Los Angeles Supreme Court and is being considered a bellwether case, meaning its outcome could influence hundreds of other lawsuits in the future.
The plaintiff is an individual user who claims that she developed compulsive patterns of use that negatively affected her mental health. The defendants include Meta, YouTube, Snapchat, and originally TikTok. Additional stakeholders include the Social Media Victims Law Center, state attorneys general, and the broader technology industry, all monitoring the case because of its potential legal and regulatory impact.
Here we focus on the platform design features that the plaintiff argues were intentionally created to increase user engagement. Many social media platforms use tools like infinite scrolling, autoplay videos, push notifications, and algorithmic recommendations to keep users continuously interacting with content. For example, features like Snapchat Streaks encourage users to return every day so they don't lose their streak with friends. Over time, these strategies have evolved as algorithms became more advanced, shifting from simple chronological feeds where just the latest post that of people you follow will pop up to AI-powered recommendations in real time that personalize content. According to the lawsuit, the overall goal of these design choices is to maximize the amount of time users spend on the platform.
A central legal question is whether social media companies owe a heightened duty of care to minors. The plaintiff's team argues that the companies collected extensive data on youth engagement, they were aware of research linking this heavy use to mental health risks, and they did not implement adequate safeguards or warnings. This raises issues of negligence and whether the platforms acted responsibly based on what they knew.
This slide highlights the key evidence presented in this case. One major component is the plaintiff's own testimony describing her impulsive use of social media and how difficult it became to limit her time on these platforms. In addition, researchers have presented studies linking heavy social media use with increased rates of anxiety, depression, and body image issues amongst teenagers. The case also includes internal company documents discovered during litigation, such as product roadmaps, A to B testing data, and safety reports. These documents may reveal what companies knew about potential risks. It's also notable that TikTok settled before the trial, which prevented some internal information from becoming public.
This case also raises ethical questions about corporate responsibility and the vulnerability of these young users. Social media companies have substantial influence through algorithms and even their data-driven design, while minors often lack awareness of how these systems shape their online experiences. The case highlights ongoing debates about balancing free expression with the need to protect underage users from potential harm.
Here we're looking at the potential implications of the case depending on the outcome. If the plaintiff wins, social media companies may be required to make design changes specifically aimed at protecting younger users. This could include built-in time limits, stronger parental controls, or limits on certain engagement features. A ruling in favor of the plaintiff could also encourage more lawsuits and potentially to increase government regulations of tech platforms. On the other hand, if the companies win, it could reinforce legal protections for tech companies and shift the conversation toward lawmakers creating new regulations rather than courts deciding on these issues.
Our takeaway is that social media can influence adolescent mental health, particularly during developmental stages when young users are more susceptible to comparison and emotional sensitivity. However, the specific circumstances of this case make it difficult to determine the extent to which social media alone contributed to the plaintiff's experiences. She had prior emotional challenges and even exposure to traumatic events, which complicates the question of causation. This case illustrates the difficulty courts face when multiple contributing factors overlap.
To conclude, this case raises an important legal question about whether social media platforms can be held responsible for mental health harms experienced by younger users. It also brings attention to the broader issue of how these platforms are designed and whether the companies have a duty to consider the well-being of their users. At the same time, the case touches on concerns about free speech and how much responsibility tech companies should have for the content and systems they create. Ultimately, the outcome of this case could influence future lawsuits and potentially reshape safety standards for social media platforms across the United States.
Before we conclude, it's important to note that the information in this presentation is based on reporting from several major news organizations, including CNBC, The Guardian, NBC Los Angeles, and PBS NewsHour. These sources provided factual coverage of the trial, including testimony, legal arguments, and broader context about similar lawsuits. Their reporting helps illustrate why this case is receiving national attention and how it fits into ongoing discussions about youth mental health and platform design.